Welcome to a special Field of Geeks presentation. I'm with Bill. This is Jonah, and we are with Lee, and we are talking his new comic project, Return of the Rooftop Koreans. Lee, thank you so much for joining Bill and I. Really appreciate you being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Kick this off. Get us started. Who are you?
So thanks so much for having me on, Bill and Jonah. So a bit more about me. So my full name is Lee Taeyeon, but because most people can't pronounce my name, I just kind of go by T.Y. Lee. But most people just call me Lee, as that's like the easiest way to just call me. So Lee works. So a bit more about me. I'm the writer and creator of a graphic novel called Return of the Rooftop Koreans, which recently released late last year. And this graphic novel is actually my first attempt at writing a graphic novel, and it actually turned out really well. And I also, wrapped up a KickStarter campaign for the graphic novel late last year. And I do plan on also relaunching the graphic novel on a new crowdfunding platform called indieCrowd. So that will be actually launching on indieCrowd somewhere in late January or early February. And that's a good summary of who I am. So a bit more about me. I'm a second generation Korean American. My parents were both immigrants from Korea who later came to the US, and that's kind of where they met. And then that's kind of how I was born. And growing up, I've always loved reading like comic books and manga, and there's just something about like reading comics and manga that just like really like inspired me. And it was just like an incredible feeling. And it was also like kind of how I learned how to read, because when I was a kid, I couldn't like read like prose novels. Obviously I couldn't read stuff like War and Peace and stuff like that. So like one of the first uh graphic novels I read was a Korean graphic novel called Hopuri Youngam, which is a Korean graphic novel that's like loosely based off of like Korean mythology. And like that was like kind of like my first overall experience with like comics and graphic novels in general. And it like really like blew me away, the whole way of like telling a story through images. And um that like really captivated me. And since then I've been like a very big comic book and manga fan. And eventually in high school I did like create some you know comics myself, but these were like really really terrible comics that I actually drew myself. And I actually drew them using like one of those cheap ballpoint pens, and it
Mhm.
just looked
Yeah.
like garbage. And yeah, these comics will never see the light of day. And and as I got like older, I like somewhere around the COVID-19 pandemic, I suddenly like you know being stuck inside. And I just like kind of got like this inspiration to create a graphic novel, like but like do things differently. And this time I'll just only write the script and hire like professional artists to handle the artwork rather than doing it myself. And that's kind of what led to Return of the Rooftop Koreans, which is again my first graphic novel. And I'm really excited to share that with the world.
Yeah,
Very
let's
cool.
talk a little bit about the concept, because one is and it's weird for me to think of 1992 as being history, but it is at this point in time. It is a moment of time in our history, and that's kind of where that term was born, right? Was the LA riots, the 92 riots. Tell us a little bit about the history behind it, because you probably know more about it than I do. And what was the inspiration from that to want to translate those events or use that as a for this project?
When the 1992 LA riots occurred, I was like really, really young, and I know some of you watching might be thinking like that I look like I'm in my 20s. I'm actually not. I'm actually in my 30s. Look a lot younger than I am. My secret is to it's a carnivore diet and wearing lots of sunscreen. So that's kind of my secret to my youthful appearance.
There you go.
And yeah, so when the 1992 LA riots first happened, I didn't really like know much about them because I was a little kid. I wasn't like watching the news. I was basically watching Sesame Street and Barney.
Mhm.
So I really learned more about the LA riots as I kind of got like older. Like I would say like when I was like 7 or 8, like my parents kind of like told me about it because I actually have like relatives who live in LA who went through the riots, and I also have like an uncle. He owned a liquor store, and that ended up being vandalized, and someone spray painted "Go back to China" on the wall, and you know like like they told me about these things when I was around 7 or 8, and that was kind of like my like when I first like got exposed to the LA riots. And as I got older, I kind of like did more research on the LA riots and kind of like learned more about them. And it's like the LA riots are just not like covered that much in like textbooks, and
Hmm.
it's just not really like taught. But
Yeah.
I thought it was like cool to learn more about the LA riots as I got older. And you know, one thing that really stood out to me about the LA riots was the story of the Rooftop Koreans. So, for those of you who've never heard of the Rooftop Koreans, essentially during the LA riots, many Korean American small business owners decided to take up arms and station themselves on the rooftops of their stores to kind of deter like looters and rioters from ransacking their stores. And by doing this, they were able to like deter looters and rioting from destroying their shops. um and this like story just was like to me really inspirational, and I felt like that was like the core essential like Korean American story, like the story of you know, Korean American immigrants who came to this country to, get a better life. And, they took a stand to protect, their small businesses that, they worked so hard to create. And this story just like really, really resonated with me. And when I first decided I wanted to like create a graphic novel, I was like, I brainstormed like a bunch of different ideas, the vast majority of which were like really bad. But the idea of like creating a, graphic novel about the Rooftop Koreans um, just like really inspired me. And I did some research and I found that there was no existing comic book or graphic novel or any like actual books that just revolve around the Rooftop Koreans in general. So, my book, Return of the Rooftop Koreans, is kind of like the first book that touches on that subject. And, that's kind of the reason why I really want to, you know, tell this story in graphic novel format. And the thing about Return of the Rooftop Koreans is, obviously it's called Return of the Rooftop Koreans. So, um, so what I want to do is rather than telling like a historically accurate account of what happened during the 1992 LA riots, I want to like tell like a news story that's set in the modern times, that's inspired by the Rooftop Koreans. I found that like writing a historically accurate story is just really difficult, and I found that there's like a lot of conflicting accounts out there, so it's kind of hard to like really make something historically accurate. So that's why my graphic novel is called Return of the Rooftop Koreans. So it's like it takes place in the modern day, but it's kind of got the same premise. It's about um, Korean American small business owners who decide to take a stand, um, take up arms, and station themselves on the rooftops of their stores to protect their livelihoods.
Yeah. I think that's really, really good and really smart that you're focusing on a project that connects with you at a personal level. I think that that is a smart move to make as a young up and coming creator. And
Yep.
I think it's something that a lot of us have failed to do in the past is, like you, I've had a lot of ideas. Not all of them have been very good. And it's when something connects with you personally that allows you to really elevate the work that goes into it. So that's very smart. And also it's topical today. You say it takes place today, even though it's based on a 30 plus year old event, but it takes place today, and it's still something that resonates, I think, with audiences today,
Yeah,
and it is very topical. So that's very good.
absolutely.
What anyone who's reading this or anyone who picks up this copy, what do you want them to get out of it? What do you want them to take away from reading this?
Mostly, what's important for me is to kind of like bring more like light and attention to the story of the Rooftop Koreans from the 1992 LA riots because a lot of people have never heard of this story and are completely unaware of it. And yes, there are some people that are familiar with the Rooftop Koreans, but they might not like have a full like understanding of what really happened. And the core themes of the book mostly revolve around like family and like standing up for your family, standing up for your businesses. It's about like living the American dream and what the American dream is because as I mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, both of my parents are immigrants from South Korea and they moved to the US in the hopes of you know living a better life because my parents, they were not very wealthy when they were living in Korea because both my parents actually grew up on melon farms. So um you know coming to the US is like for them like an opportunity to live a better life and to you know
Oh,
create like a better future. And when they met and they got married and they had me, that their plan was obviously to give me a better future. And um I feel like that core essence is also in my book because my book is all about like the American dream, having
Hmm.
a better future. And that's kind of like really the themes that I want to emphasize. And I just want people to like read the book and um, understand like the importance of family and the American dream and not being afraid to take a stand and stand up for what you believe in and to protect you know your business, your livelihood. And that's essentially like the overall core message of my book. It's like a message of hope and optimism. So that's
Right on.
kind of what I really want like readers to get out of it.
That's
yeah.
excellent. Good. So one of the things that fascinates me with, especially with independent creators, is the creative process because it can look different for everybody. Take me through what your creative process looks like from the birth of this idea to actual getting pen to paper. Walk me through that.
So, as I was mentioning, I, had like a ton of different ideas that I kind of like toyed around with. And there was like one idea in particular that really stood out, and that was like my idea for a graphic novel about the Rooftop Koreans. I also had like another idea that I wanted to like create like a book equivalent of like a found footage horror movie, but I found that that just doesn't really like work because like like because I want like each panel to be kind of like a screenshot from like a video camera recording something. And I just found that that whole concept just really did not work. So what I loved about this story was it was like unique, it was different, and no one had ever done something like this before. Because if you look at like the vast majority of comics out there, they're usually like superhero comics,
Mhm.
fantasy comics,
Yeah.
science fiction. And I wanted to tell like a more of, I guess, my comic's more of like an action thriller that's inspired by history, which is just not very common, and it definitely like stands out amongst like all the superhero fantasy and science fiction stuff out there. And so I think like my process first started with doing like a lot of research, like further exploring the LA riots and what happened, and learning as much about the LA riots as possible. And doing my research, I learned like lots of different things. Like there are like lots of like racial tensions within
Hmm.
LA. Like at the time in 1992, like LA was more I would say it's like it's more segregated. Like each ethnic group was like highly segregated from one another, and they didn't really interact with much. So
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
like each other, so there was like a lot more racial tensions there. So that's something like I really learned about. And there was also the story of Latasha Harlins, who was a 15-year-old black girl who was shot by a Korean American store owner named Soon Duja. And that like really like um created like a lot of racial tensions between the black community and the Korean community. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard the song from Ice Cube called Black Korea. Have it either of you heard of that song?
I have not.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah,
might have heard it, but the name doesn't is not familiar to me.
I've
yeah.
heard
So
it. It's been a long time since I've listened
yeah,
to it, but
yeah. So Ice Cube, he wrote like a song called Black Korea, which was inspired by the shooting of Latasha Harlins. And essentially
hmm.
most people would say that Black Korea is like a very, very racist song about burning down and looting Korean American businesses. And
Hmm.
um many would argue that this song like helped fuel the LA riots. And at the time I remember, I mean, my parents like telling me that this song Black Korea was like played all over like radio stations. Like it was really popular with the radio, so it became like this big radio hit. And then of course there was the Rodney King incident where four police officers beat the shit out of Rodney King, and the whole thing was caught on camera. And these
Yeah.
four police officers were acquitted. And um because they were acquitted, like you know it like pissed a lot of people off. And it just like it's kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. And
Yeah.
that's kind of like
Hmm.
what led to like all the mass chaos during the LA riots. And of course the song Black Korea also like played a large role in that as well. And a lot of like looters and rioters would like target Korean American businesses. I think a lot of that had to do with the Latasha Harlins incident, as well as the song Black Korea. And that kind of like inspired many Korean Americans to take up arms and stand on the rooftops of their stores. And the thing is, a lot of Korean American immigrant males, you know, um, had previously served in the South Korean military, because in South Korea, military service is mandatory for all males. So like pretty much every Korean American man knows how to use a gun. So and also at the time, like a lot of Korean American businesses, they did not like have like full insurance policies. Like they might have had like liability insurance, but not like they weren't like fully insured. So if like their stores were to be destroyed, like that would be the end of their livelihood. So for many Korean Americans, they had like no choice but to stand on the rooftops of their stores
Mhm.
and to defend it. And know, through my research, I actually like spoke to numerous Korean Americans who
Oh
were
wow.
there during the LA riots. And this also included some relatives of mine, and um, many other people that I also spoke with. And I as I mentioned earlier, I found like a lot of like conflicting information. Like everyone like had a slightly different version of the events. And I just found like really hard to like come up with something that was like historically accurate. And there was like a guy I emailed who called me a grifter, and I felt like maybe trying to like I guess he saw that maybe he thought that I was like trying to monetize or grift off of a tragedy, and
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think that like pissed some people off. So that's kind of why I decided to like tell like a fictional story that's like inspired by the story of the Rooftop Koreans, but set in the modern times. So that was kind of what I decided to do, and from there I wrote the script. So I kind of like first started off by coming up with like the characters and like a very high level like outline of like the story. So what I did is I just had like an Excel spreadsheet, and each row on the Excel spreadsheet was like a scene. So that's kind of how I outline my story. And the best thing about Excel is you can kind of like like move the rows around. So I was able to like move the scenes around and change like the order to make things like flow better and work better. And
Mhm.
after that and I also like did read like lots of books on like writing and like how to write comic books. Like there was like one called I think it was How to Write Comics for Dummies, and um another one called Saves the Cat, which is like more for how to like structure a novel. I don't know if either of you have heard of that book, Saves the Cat.
I have not,
I
huh?
have not, no.
Yeah. So it's like there's like this book called Saves the Cat, and it's a very popular book that many novelists or even like Hollywood screenwriters use to learn how to like plot and create like a story structure. So I read that book, and I also read like another book on how to write dialogue, and one on character arcs. So I read like a ton of books, and then from there, I wrote the script, and then I got like a professional editor. So I found a guy on Reedsy named Matt, and he did a really good job editing that and making the script more professional. And then from there, I found like the line artist. So the line artist is a guy named Leper, and he's from Chile, and he's a very talented artist. And I love his art style because he kind of can do like both like Eastern like manga influenced artwork as well as like more Western influenced artwork. So I kind of like how he kind of like blends those together. So I hired him to like design like the characters, like do the character design. So I would like send him like a one paragraph description of what like the character would look like, and then he'll kind of like design it, and then he like did all the storyboards and all the line art. And then for the colors, I found a guy in Indonesia named Donnie Kayono, and and I had him color the pages, and he did like a really good job with that. And and then from there, I hired a letterer, a guy named Dave Pelletier, and he did a very good job, like adding the letters to the pages. And once that was all done, um, I found like a printer to like print the book, and I kind of like taught myself Adobe InDesign to like kind of learn how to like set up print files. So I did that, and then I sent that over to the print shop, and they printed the books out, and the books turned out to be like really really good. And I really love the way they turned out, and I've gotten like a lot of really great feedback on the books. So that's like a pretty good summary of like my whole creative process
Yeah.
and my whole creative journey.
Now,
Gotcha.
how do you find the artists, especially when they're in like Chile or Indonesia? How are you coming across them? Is it just online? Is it like a deviantart.com type thing? Where are you finding the talent?
I'd
Um,
say mostly on the internet because the great thing about the internet is you can easily like find artists like all over the globe. And
Hmm.
so for you know the line artist, I think I found him on I think it was Instagram, And on Instagram, I'm following like a lot of different artists from all over the world on there. And sometimes I see like his art on my Instagram feed, and I figured I message him and see if he'd be interested in working on this project I had. So I had like a call with him and talked about the project, and um, he loved the idea and he joined in. And as for the colorist, uh, Donnie Kayono, I actually found him on Facebook because I saw him like posting like pages of like comics as well as like covers of comics that he colored, and like his style just like really stood out to me. And I figured I'd reach out to him as well and got him to do the colors. And for lettering, I also found like a guy online. I don't remember which site it was on. Actually, I think it was on ArtStation. Yeah, so I found him on ArtStation, and I reached out to him and got him to do letters. And I also like reached out to multiple artists to do covers. And for my covers, what I really wanted to do was just mostly like hire Korean artists to kind of like really showcase Korean artwork. So
Hmm.
Very cool.
I have like five different covers. One of them is done by the line artist South Leper, and then the other four are done by um, Korean artists. And these are like Korean artists that I've been following for quite a while on Instagram. And I figured I'd reach out to them and ask them if they'd be interested in doing a cover for my book. And the thing is, like many of these Korean artists I reached out to were already like familiar with the story of the Rooftop Koreans, so I didn't like really have to explain it to them. And they did like a really good job creating these covers. So that's kind of where I found most of my artists, just on like social media sites like Facebook, Instagram, or
Hmm.
ArtStation. And I feel like those are like the best places to find artists these days.
I want to know, I guess, a little detail in terms of you said that it launched last year as a Kickstarter, right? And the Kickstarter, was that successfully funded? Is that how that worked? And that kind of gave you the ability to get the project completed?
I took a slightly different approach. So my book was actually 100% self-funded rather than crowd-funded. And thing is, I kind of like use Kickstarter as more like a pre-order platform. And I noticed that a lot of people are doing that now on Kickstarter. Like I noticed that there's a lot of books on Kickstarter that are essentially, I mean, like comic books or graphic novels on Kickstarter that are completely done,
Hmm.
but they're just kind of like using Kickstarter to as a pre-order platform to like determine what's the demand out there in the market, and then from there kind of like figure out what the size of the print run is, because obviously you don't want to print too many copies or too little copies. So that's kind of the approach I took. So I fully funded it myself. So on Kickstarter, um I would say that it did okay. It wasn't like a big success or a ginormous failure. It wasn't like, you know, the biggest failure or the biggest success. And I think maybe like one of the issues was I kind of like launched the book in like a very busy week. So this was like the day after Labor Day, and that probably wasn't like the best day to launch the book. And in addition to launching on Kickstarter, I also launched it on Indiegogo at the same time as Kickstarter. And the reason why I did it this way is that um, I have some like relatives in Korea as well as some friends in Korea that were interested in the book. And the problem with the way Korea is done is that in Korea, credit cards are a little different. So in Korea, you have like domestic credit cards and international credit cards, and most people only have a domestic credit card and aren't like eligible for international credit card. And because of that, they can like only use their credit card domestically. So that makes it impossible for them to like buy something from an American website like Kickstarter, unless Kickstarter supported PayPal, but Kickstarter does not support PayPal. However, Indiegogo does. So essentially Kickstarter is useless for anyone living in Korea. Like they can't really use site, but they can use Indiegogo. So I did like get a couple of book sales off of Indiegogo. It wasn't like a very big success, and I also got some off of Kickstarter. And then once the Kickstarter campaign ended, I submitted like the print order to have the book printed out, which is right here. That's the book, 100% fully printed out
Nice.
with
Very cool.
all the
Yeah.
pages.
How many pages is the book?
So it's a total of 148 pages, but it
Okay.
has around 117 story pages, and I did like include like lots of extras like a art gallery, character bios and stuff like
Mhm.
that in the back. And another thing that I also have is I also got these really cool clear plastic trading cards. So they're like,
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
nice.
yeah, they're like basically it's a clear background and it's got like an image here, and then on the back there's like some like information about like the character, and there's like some other ones. So this is something I also did. So these are like a clear plastic that's kind of like a similar material to like a credit card, but like it's
Mhm.
transparent.
Yeah, that's cool.
And yeah, and the reason why I did this is like it's unique and it's different, and I noticed that no one else is doing something like that. Like it's just completely different. And the only other example like clear plastic trading cards I can think of were these Pokemon Lament cards, which were only released in Europe. They were never released in the US. So these Pokemon Lament cards also have like the clear background with images, and so I kind of like stole the idea from that. And these cards look really cool. And um, I also plan on like relaunching my book on another crowdfunding platform called Indie Crowdfund. I'm guessing neither of you have heard of it. It's relatively new. It's a very
Mhm.
new crowdfunding site, mostly for like comic book creators. And personally, when I've used it, I feel like I like it a lot better than like Kickstarter or Indiegogo. And
Mhm.
Mhm.
it's a very small, relatively new site. So I do plan on launching a campaign on Indie Crowdfund soon, and hopefully that turns out pretty good, and hopefully I get some more book sales from there. And then um, I also plan on like selling my book at on on my website, as well as also at conferences. So I do plan on like maybe renting out like a table and selling books there as well. So
Yeah.
that's kind of
Very
like
cool.
my plan.
What so if someone wants to buy a copy of the book today, do they have to wait until it hits the kind of indie crowd fund site to get a copy, or where can they buy a copy today if they wanted a copy?
Um, Well, if they want to buy a copy, I guess they could just go on like either Kickstarter or Indiegogo, because on
Okay.
Indiegogo I do have uh what's it called in demand activated, and same with Kickstarter I have it's called late pledges activated. So if someone wants to get the book today, they can just go on either Indiegogo or
Okay.
Kickstarter
Very
and
cool.
order the book
Yeah.
there, and I'll get like a notification via my
Nice.
email telling me that someone ordered the book, and then I'll of course bag and board the book, pack it up, and mail it over to them. So
Excellent.
and I
Very
do
cool.
plan on selling the book in the future on my website, but my website is still like currently in progress, and still kind of I'm working with like a guy in Pakistan, so he's kind of designing that and um making that like better. Like right now the website doesn't really work at all, but
Yeah.
hopefully I can get that up sometime in the spring. So those are my plans right now.
Excellent.
Very
I
cool.
I have a question regarding the characters because those character cards are very cool. Um, are the characters are they inspired by any of the people that you had interviewed or talked to as you were putting this project together, or are they completely fictitious? Where do these characters come from?
So kind of. So like for instance, the main character, this guy, his name is Ernest Guan. So Ernest Guan is a he's a Korean American um grocery store owner. So he owns like a small Korean American grocery called Guammart, and this is his like small grocery store that he runs with his wife named Sunny, who is this character, and then he also has a daughter, this character named Minnie. So it's Sunny Guan and Minnie Guan, and the character of Ernest, he's the main character, and he was like strongly inspired by my uncle in a lot of ways
Hmm.
because he has like a very similar personality to my uncle, and um, you know, when I was a kid, my dad he ran away, and I don't know what the fuck happened to him after that, and I heard he died from too many nose beers, but um, my uncle kind of like he became like my father figure, and um, he was like a very influential like person for me, and he like really um, shaped me and impacted me growing up. So I based the character of Ernest Guan on him.
Okay.
So basically, he is my uncle, and um,
Nice.
yeah, but not as ugly looking, I guess.
Bill,
Well, I think
I know I've been asking a lot of questions. Bill, do you have any questions from your end
well,
for
I think
Lee?
the main thing I want to know, like we go to a lot of conventions here locally. Is there any plan for you to maybe attend some local conventions to you? I'm not sure exactly where you're located at, but are there any plans for that, or to maybe eventually branch out to like some of the bigger conventions that are more like regional?
So I guess so. I'm actually in Colorado, so I'm in the very close to the Denver area.
Okay.
So I do plan on like maybe attending like some local events in the Denver area, and so so my plans is mostly just to like go to these local smaller events because I did like look into some of these events, and like renting out a table is like really 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 expensive, and I
Yeah.
don't want to like spend like hundreds of dollars on like or even possibly thousands of dollars on like a table if I'm not gonna like get a return on my investment. So
Right.
um so I guess mostly for me it's like I think what I'm going to do more is like kind of attend some like events more as like a attendee rather than like as a vendor, just to kind of like see how much traffic there is, and I just want to like make sure like these events like do have a lot of traffic to justify like paying a lot of money for a table, and
Yeah.
um so yeah, I guess that's kind of my plan. It's just mostly just doing local events. I do not plan on like traveling out of state for any events. Like,
Hmm.
that's obviously going to be very, very expensive, and I don't want to like spend money on like, an airplane ticket and a hotel, and yeah,
Yeah.
and it's probably just best to stick with
Right.
local events I can drive to. So yeah, I only plan on like doing like local events, and
Yeah.
I also thought about maybe like um trying to like sell my book at like flea markets. I heard like some people have actually had quite a bit of success selling books at flea markets, so that's
Hmm.
another angle that I'm definitely like exploring.
Very
Right on.
cool.
What
So,
and along those lines, what does success for you look like in terms of this book? I mean, and is it a dollar amount of money sold? Is it a number of units sold? Or is it less? Is it, I guess, more spiritual, for lack of a better term, less tangible? What does that success look like for you?
To me, I guess success is mostly just bringing the story to life. Like to me, that's kind of what I really want to do. I really want to take the story that I had and bring it to life and make it a tangible product which now exists in this form, and so the fact that this book exists to me is essentially
The success.
yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously going in, I kind of like knew the sales wouldn't like be the best because obviously this is more a book that appeals more to like a smaller niche, because the books that are really selling are like the superhero, fantasy, and science fiction books, and this
Right.
doesn't really fit any of those genres. So I kind of knew going in that the market wasn't going to be as big, but there was still going to be like a market there that could sell the book to. So for me, you know, success is like just like bringing the story to the market and just having people read the story and enjoy it. So I feel that because I've accomplished that, I've succeeded.
I like that. That's good.
So on
Bill,
the
I cut you off. Go ahead.
oh no, you're good. So on the opposite side of that, I guess, or on the tail end of that, without spoiling anything about this book, is this a self-contained story? Like there's a definitive end at the end of it, or what are your plans for the future should you decide to create more graphic novels?
Um, so this is essentially a standalone book with a self-contained story. However, at the end, like I ended the book in a way that there could be a sequel in the future
Hmm.
if I decided to create a sequel, which right now is highly unlikely. I feel like I told the story I wanted to tell, and I
Yeah.
do have like a few ideas for a sequel, but I don't know if I want to like work on that. And so I think for me, mostly I just want to like focus on like other creative ventures. Like right now, I am working on like another graphic novel. So this is in the early stages. I'm still scripting it out. It's like a fantasy graphic novel, which is
Mhm.
completely different from Return of the Rooftop Koreans. And this graphic novel is like strongly inspired by like video games like Eco, Shadow of the Colossus, The Last Guardian. I don't know if either of you guys
I'm
have played any of those
You
games.
know,
very,
you're
very big
talking
fans. Very big
Bill's
fans of
language
those.
right now, and if
Yes.
it's not Sonic or Mario, I'm probably not going to know it.
I am a huge video game nerd, so I'm all for it. That sounds great.
Hmm.
Um, so I also think like getting a different perspective on historical events such as what we're getting with this comic is or this graphic novel are very important because my experience, I loved history class, but it was all told from a very tunnel visioned perspective. Do you have any plans on maybe telling other stories from a historical perspective or anything like that that's like maybe significant to Korean Americans or to, South Koreans, anything like that?
Um, so there are a few ideas that I had in mind that I want to maybe explore, but the problem with these ideas is there's just not like a very large market. Like one idea I
Hmm.
had was like between I think it was 1910 to 1945, South Korea was occupied by the Japanese, and
Hmm.
during this time, the Japanese like did lots of horrible things to many Koreans, including genociding many of them and also enslaving many of them. And I'm sure maybe you've heard of the story of the comfort girls. I don't know if you're familiar with that. These
No.
are like you know young girls, or maybe you might know them as comfort women. So they're mostly like young
Hmm.
girls who were
Hmm.
kidnapped by the Japanese military to become like sex slaves. So like back in the day, like the Japanese military would go to like many Korean homes, and like they'll go door to door from home to home to collect like protection money. And if you didn't have money to pay them, there were of course other ways to pay, and sometimes that would involve them raping and maybe like kidnapping um, you know young girls and basically turned them into sex slaves. And um, you know, during this time from 1910 to 1945, there were like many South Korean resistance fighters who fought against the Japanese military, and I really
Hmm.
love like their story about how they stood up to the Japanese military, and in a lot of ways that kind of like parallels the story of the Rooftop Koreans in some ways. And there's a
Hmm.
part of me that wants to like tell that story and potentially like tell that story in a graphic novel format. But of course, I think like the market for like a story like that is like
Mhm.
really, really small. It's just a very, very niche subject. But
Right.
yeah, so I do kind of want to like tell that story though.
Well, and this story that you've created is also pretty near and dear to your heart. Like you have your own personal family connections to it. So I can see why you know, basically want to tell this story to everybody. And I think it's very important for that story to be told.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Um,
it's definitely important to tell that story. I really want to like share more like Korean American type stories and bring that to like the market.
yeah.
Yeah. One other question I always like to ask, kind of not about the project itself, but more generally, if Bill or I were to come to you and say, Lee, we are thinking about writing a graphic novel or a comic book, what advice would you give us or anybody else who's looking to do something along these lines?
I would say the first piece of advice is read lots of books. So as I mentioned, there was the book that I read. I think it's called Comic Book Writing for Dummies. So definitely read that one. And then there's like also other books on like how to like plot a story. Like as I mentioned before, the book Saves the Cat. That's another one that I recommend reading. And there's you know a lot of like other books out there on like writing in general or storytelling. So I would say like definitely read those books. And another thing that I would say is very important is to see if you can like find like scripts for like well-known comics. Like you can like go on Google and look up like the script for like like Frank Miller comics or like The Watchmen, and there's like
Mhm.
scripts for pretty much like every comic book out there on the internet. And by every comic book I mean like the major ones. So
Mhm.
I'll say about like looking at and reading other like comic book writers scripts is like a really great way to like learn how to like write a comic book script. So that would be like the primary piece of advice that I would give to like people that want to like write a comic book.
Yeah.
Good, good. Anything else that you want us to know about the project as we wind things down? Or Bill, did you have any other questions from your end?
I didn't. I just want to thank you very much for coming on and talking with us about this. I'll definitely get some information from you as far as links to your crowdfunding and things like that. We can kind of direct our viewers and listeners to as well. But yeah, I really think this is something that just from reading the preview and everything, I'm very excited to check out. So thank you very much. And I can't stress enough how awesome it is that you went through all this collaborative effort to produce something like this. This is just awesome.
Yeah, I'm always a champion for young, even though you say you're not that young, you're young, for young,
Yeah.
aspiring or new creators who are looking to get into this industry. I don't think you can have too much of it, especially when it's a project that is unlike so many other things that are out there, which this
Yeah.
is, in terms of in terms of the genre, in terms of the style, because even from the brief preview that I saw, it definitely looks different from any number of other projects out there that I've seen, and I mean that complimentarily. That's good. And so, yeah, I definitely champion these types of efforts. So, kudos to you. Good job. Can't wait to see what you've got next. I'm looking forward to checking out the book in full. In Again, for people that want to buy the book, it's available still at Kickstarter or at Indiegogo. Right? Did I get those two right?
Yeah, I Kickstarter Indiegogo, and you can just search for them in the search bar. Like just type up Return of the Rooftop Koreans and it will show up.
Cool. Excellent.
Very
Excellent. And then it
cool.
will be available through Indie Crowdfund as well. It sounds like in the near future. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So perfect. Well,
All
thank you very
right.
much, Lee. Pleasure having you on. Appreciate you sharing your story with us. And yeah, we look forward to seeing what you have in store next.
Yeah, so thanks again for having me on, Jonah and Bill. It's been
Yeah.
great talking about the story of the Rooftop Koreans and what inspired me to create this book. And I really enjoyed this conversation. And again, thanks for inviting me on as a guest.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I have one final question, since you mentioned being a fan of manga and comics and stuff like that. What's one manga and one comic you would recommend to somebody who's never picked one up before?
One manga, one comic. Um, so there is one manga I would recommend, is one called Monster, which is I forgot who wrote it, but it's like, I think his name was Urasawa. And Monster is like a very different type of manga. It's different from like Dragon Ball Z or Naruto, as it's basically the story of a doctor who saves the life of a young boy who ends up growing up to become a serial killer. And then this doctor, he feels guilty, and he is now trying to like go after the serial killer. And it's very different from all the other mangas out there because it's like grounded in reality. It's also like very dark, realistic, and gritty. So that's one that I would also highly recommend checking out. And there's also like an anime of it as well. And then for comics, besides my own comic, Return of the Rooftop Koreans, um, I guess I guess this is a hard one. I guess maybe it will be this comic that I read as a kid called Hopuri Youngum. It's a Korean comic, and this is like the first comic that I'd ever read, and that's the comic that like got me into comics. So yeah, so it will be the Monster for manga, and then for comics it'll be Hopuri Youngum.
Very cool. Well, we're always looking for new stuff to read. So we very much appreciate you coming on, and yeah, we'll get all that information out there.
And for everybody else that had joined us for this episode, this was a special presentation of Field of Geeks. Special thanks to Lee for being here. Special thanks to Bill. I am Jonah, and we will see you guys next time. Peace.